Kofi Mensah stood by the large glass window of his office on the 42nd floor. The afternoon sun was bright and warm, casting long shadows across the city of Accra below him. He could see everything from up here: the modern buildings, the busy streets, the people moving like tiny ants going about their daily lives. He was a billionaire, one of the most successful men in West Africa. His company had made him rich beyond his wildest dreams, yet as he looked out at the world, something felt missing inside him. His secretary, Amina, entered the office quietly. She held a cream-colored envelope in her hands. The envelope was beautiful, with gold lettering on the front. Amina placed it carefully on his desk. "This arrived for you, Mr. Mensah," she said with a gentle smile. She could sense that this was not just any ordinary letter. There was something important about it. Kofi picked up the envelope slowly. His hands felt shaky as he opened it. Inside was an invitation card, written in beautiful, flowing handwriting. As he read the first words, his heart stopped. The invitation was for a wedding. The bride's name was Zainab Boateng. Just seeing her name made Kofi feel dizzy. He had to sit down in his leather chair. Zainab. He had not heard that name spoken out loud in 5 years. But he thought about her every single day. He had not seen her face in 5 years, but he could still remember exactly how she looked when she smiled. She was the love of his life. She was the woman he had wanted to spend forever with. And she had left him. 5 years ago, Kofi was different. He was less successful, less rich, but perhaps more alive. He and Zainab had been together for 7 years. They had made plans for the future. They had dreamed of a life together. Kofi remembered the night he had proposed to her. It was on Labadi Beach under the stars. The ocean was calm and beautiful. She had said yes with tears of joy in her eyes. They had kissed as the waves crashed against the shore. But then, slowly things changed. Kofi became obsessed with his work. He wanted to build a business empire. He worked late every night. He took calls during dinner. He missed anniversaries and special moments because he was too busy thinking about deals and money. Zainab tried to understand. She waited for him. She supported him. But after a few years she got tired. She got tired of being second place. She got tired of loving a man who loved his work more than he loved her. One day she had enough. She told Kofi that she could not marry him. She said that love alone was not enough if he could not give her time and attention. She said that she deserved to be with someone who would choose her above everything else. Kofi had begged her to stay. He had promised to change. But she had already made up her mind. She packed her things and left. That was the last time he had seen her. For the first year after she left, Kofi had thrown himself into his work even more. He worked like a man possessed, as if business success could fill the hole in his heart. And it seemed to work. He made more and more money. He became more and more famous. But the hollow feeling never left. No matter how much money he earned, no matter how many deals he closed, he still felt empty inside. He still missed her. Now, 5 years later, she was getting married. She was marrying someone else. The invitation said that the wedding would be in 2 weeks. The groom's name was David Owusu. Kofi had heard of David. He was also a businessman, wealthy and successful. David could give Zainab everything that money could buy. But could he give her what really mattered? Could he give her love and attention and a true partnership? Kofi read through the invitation again. It was printed on expensive paper. The details were perfect. The venue was the Grand Ballroom, the most prestigious location in Accra. There would be hundreds of guests. It would be a big, important event. Everyone in their social circle would be there. It would be a celebration of Zainab's success and her new beginning. He looked at the bottom of the invitation. It said, +1 welcome. Kofi would be expected to bring someone with him. A partner. A date. Someone to show the world that he had also moved on and was happy. But that was the problem. He had not really moved on. He had just become busier and richer. And he was not happy. For 3 days, Kofi could not decide what to do. Should he go to the wedding or should he stay away? His best friend Emmanuel advised him not to go. Why would you want to torture yourself? Emmanuel had asked. Seeing her marry another man will only bring you pain. His business partner agreed. They said that attending the wedding would be bad for his image and would be emotionally harmful. But Kofi felt something deep inside him that said he had to go. He did not know why. Maybe he needed to see her one more time to finally accept that she was gone. Maybe he needed to see that she was happy so that he could let her go and move forward. Or maybe, in some secret corner of his heart, he still hoped that something magical would happen. That she would see him and remember what they had. That she would realize she had made a mistake leaving him. This last thought was foolish, Kofi knew. But it lived in his heart anyway. It was a hope so fragile and delicate that he was almost ashamed to admit it to himself. Yet it was real. 2 weeks seemed like both a very long time and a very short time. Kofi spent his days working as usual, but his mind was always elsewhere. He found himself looking at old photographs. He found himself listening to songs that reminded him of Zainab. He found himself imagining what she would look like now. Would she be even more beautiful? Would she be happy? Would she think of him at all? He bought a new suit for the wedding. It was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, made from the finest fabric. He looked in the mirror and saw a successful man looking back at him. A man with money, with power, with influence. But he did not see a happy man. He did not see a fulfilled man. He did not see a man at peace with himself. The night before the wedding, Kofi could not sleep. He lay in his bed in his large penthouse apartment and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow he would see Zainab. Tomorrow he would watch her marry another man. Tomorrow his heart would either finally break completely, or it would finally begin to heal. He did not know which one it would be. The morning of the wedding arrived with bright sunshine and a gentle breeze. Kofi woke early, dressed in his new charcoal suit, and checked himself in the mirror one last time. He looked perfect on the outside, but inside his stomach was full of butterflies. His driver, Joseph, was waiting downstairs with the black Mercedes ready. The car was one of Kofi's most prized possessions. It was sleek and expensive, a symbol of his success. Joseph had worked for Kofi for 8 years and knew him well. As they drove through the streets of Accra toward the venue, Kofi looked out the window without really seeing anything. His mind was too busy thinking about Zainab. What would she wear? Would she be nervous? Would she smile the way she used to smile? The city passed by in a blur of buildings and people. After about 30 minutes of driving, something unexpected happened. The car suddenly made a strange sound. It was a sound like metal scraping against metal. Then the engine began to shake. Joseph frowned and gripped the steering wheel tighter. The car slowed down and then, with a final mechanical cough, it stopped completely. The engine died. Joseph tried to restart it several times, but nothing worked. The car would not move. They were stranded on a quiet road on the outskirts of Accra. This road was not like the busy main streets. It was a poorer area with small houses and simple shops along the sides. Joseph immediately took out his phone to call for help. "Do not worry, sir," he said to Kofi. "I will call the mechanic. They will come quickly. The car was serviced just last week. This is very strange." Kofi stepped out of the car to get some fresh air. He was wearing his expensive suit, and it felt out of place in this humble neighborhood. He stood on the side of the road and looked around. There was a concrete bridge not far away that arched over what had once been a river, but the river was now dry. The area was quiet and peaceful in a way that the busy city was not. As Kofi walked slowly along the road, he noticed an old man sitting near the bridge on a worn blanket. The old man was sorting through a small pile of items, as if he was organizing his few possessions. The man's clothes were torn and dirty. His shoes were held together with pieces of string. His face was wrinkled and weathered by time and hardship. But when he looked up and saw Kofi, his eyes were kind and intelligent. They were the eyes of someone who had lived a full life and learned many lessons. Something strange happened inside Kofi. Normally he would have walked past this man without stopping. People of his status did not talk to beggars on the street. But today something drew him toward this old man. It was as if some invisible force was pulling him across the road. "Good morning, my son," the old man said in English that was careful and proper, with just a slight accent. "You look like a man who is carrying very heavy stones in his heart. Come, sit with me for a moment." Kofi was surprised. This man had looked at him for only a few seconds, yet he seemed to know that something was wrong. Most people saw only his expensive suit and his successful appearance. But this old man saw something deeper. Kofi found himself walking over and sitting down on the worn blanket beside the old man. He did not know why he was doing this. It seemed crazy, but it also felt right. "My name is Kwesi," the old man said, extending a weathered hand. "Kwesi Ose. I am pleased to meet you." Kofi shook his hand. The grip was firm and warm, despite the hardship this man had clearly suffered. "I am Kofi," he said simply. "Kofi Mensah." Kwesi's eyes widened slightly. "Kofi Mensah? The businessman? The one whose name I sometimes hear on the radio?" Kofi nodded, feeling strange. It was unusual for a homeless man to know who he was. Kwesi smiled. "Ah, I see. You are very successful. You have much money. Yet you sit with an old beggar on the street. This tells me that you are a good person, even if you have forgotten it yourself." Kofi did not know how to respond to this. He asked Kwesi about his life. Kwesi's story was sad and also beautiful. He had been a teacher for 30 years. He had taught primary school children in a small village outside Accra. He had loved his job. He had loved seeing children learn and grow. He had been respected in his community. But then many years ago, a man he trusted had stolen his life savings. This man had promised Kwesi that he could invest the money and make it grow. Instead, the man had disappeared with all of Kwesi's money. Without his savings, Kwesi could not survive. He lost his home. He lost his job. He lost everything. But I do not hate him, Kwesi said calmly. I learned a lesson. I learned that money is not what makes life valuable. I have nothing now, but I have something that money cannot buy. I have peace. I have time to think about what really matters. I have time to help others when I can. I have my memories of all the children I taught. I have my dignity because no one can take that from me if I do not let them. Kofi listened to every word. As Kwesi spoke, something was happening inside him. He was beginning to see his own life differently. He had spent 5 years becoming richer and richer, but he had never become happier. He had pushed away the woman he loved because he wanted to build a business empire. He had won success, but he had lost love. And now, sitting on this blanket with this homeless man, he was beginning to understand that he had gotten his priorities completely wrong. Kofi told Kwesi about Zainab. He told him about the wedding he was going to attend. He told him about his broken heart. Kwesi listened without interrupting. When Kofi finished speaking, Kwesi was quiet for a long moment. You are going to this wedding to show her that you have become rich and successful, Kwesi said finally. But this is not what she needs to see. She needs to see that you have become wise. She needs to see that you have learned what truly matters. You need to show her, and more importantly, you need to show yourself that you are more than your money. As Kwesi was speaking, an idea came to Kofi. It was a crazy idea. It was an idea that no one in his position would ever have. But he felt it was right. Without thinking too much, he said, Kwesi, would you come with me to the wedding? Come as my guest. Come with me today. Kwesi's eyes filled with tears. I am a homeless beggar, he said softly. I cannot go to such an important event. I have nothing to wear. I have nothing to offer. You have everything I need, Kofi said. You have wisdom and truth. You have a good heart. That is more than enough. So Kofi did something that shocked everyone around him. He took Kwesi to a tailor shop. He bought him a new suit, not cheap but fine quality. He took him to a barber and had him cleaned up. He bought him new shoes. When Kwesi looked in the mirror, he was transformed. He was still an old man, but now he was a dignified old man. And most importantly, he still had the kind eyes that showed his good heart. As they drove back to the wedding venue in the repaired car, Kofi felt something change inside him. He was no longer going to the wedding to prove something to Zainab. He was going because he wanted to share something true. He wanted to show her and everyone else that the most important things in life cannot be bought with money. The grand ballroom was a sight to behold. It was decorated with flowers imported from all over the world. White roses and pink lilies covered every surface. The chandeliers hung from the ceiling like diamonds, casting sparkling light across the room. Tables were dressed in white cloth, and each table had elaborate centerpieces made of flowers and candles. Soft classical music played in the background. Everything was perfect. Everything was expensive. Everything showed that this was a wedding of very important people. The guests had already started arriving. Men wore expensive suits in dark colors. Women wore beautiful dresses in every color imaginable. There were politicians, businessmen, celebrities, and people of high status. Everyone was dressed to impress. Everyone was there to see Zainab marry David Owusu, and to be seen themselves. Waiters in white uniforms moved through the crowd, offering champagne and small snacks. The air smelled of flowers and perfume. Zainab was in a back room, preparing for the ceremony. She wore a white wedding dress that had taken 3 months to make. It was embroidered with beads and was the most beautiful thing she owned. Her hair was arranged perfectly, and her makeup was flawless. She looked like a princess. But inside she was nervous and confused. She kept thinking about the guest list. She kept wondering if Kofi would actually come. She had invited him specifically to make him jealous. She wanted him to see that she had moved on. She wanted him to realize what he had lost when he chose his business over her. Outside the ballroom, Kofi and Kwesi arrived in the Mercedes. Immediately people began to stare. Kofi looked as he always did, perfect and successful in his charcoal suit. But Kwesi, even though he was now cleaned up and wearing a new suit, still looked different. He was old. He was thin. His face showed that he had lived a hard life. People whispered to each other. Who was this old man? Why was the billionaire bringing a homeless person to such an important event? The whispers grew louder as Kofi and Kwesi walked into the ballroom. Heads turned. Eyes narrowed. People pointed discreetly. One woman said loudly to her friend, "Is that man his grandfather? I did not know Kofi had family." Another person said, "Perhaps he is some kind of charity case. Why else would Kofi bring such a person to an event like this?" Kofi did not seem to care about the whispers. He held Kwesi's arm gently and guided him through the crowd. He found them seats near the back, where Kwesi could see everything but would not be in the center of attention. But before they sat down, something beautiful happened. An elderly woman in the crowd suddenly stood up. She was Kofi's mother's friend. She was also old and she was struggling to move with her cane. Without hesitation, Kofi left Kwesi and hurried over to the woman. He helped her stand up straight. He offered her his arm. He walked her slowly to a better seat where she could be more comfortable. The woman was surprised and touched by his kindness. She smiled at him warmly. "Thank you, young man," she said. "You have a good heart. Your mother would be proud of you." This simple act of kindness set the tone for what was to come. People began to see Kofi differently. Yes, he was successful and rich, but he was also kind. And the old man he had brought with him seemed to bring out this kindness even more. Kwesi and Kofi sat together, and as they waited for the ceremony to begin, they talked quietly. They laughed about small things. Kwesi pointed out the beautiful flowers and said, "Look at how God has blessed us with such colors and beauty." Kofi smiled. Kwesi watched the people arriving and said, "They are all so worried about how they look and what others think. But when you are my age, you learn that none of that matters." Kofi listened and nodded, understanding the wisdom in Kwesi's words. Then the ceremony began. The music changed to a more formal song. Everyone stood up. And then Zainab appeared. She was beautiful. She truly was. She looked like a dream in her white dress. But as she walked down the aisle toward David, her eyes scanned the crowd. She was looking for someone. Her eyes found Kofi. And for just a moment she paused. She saw him sitting with Kwesi. She saw him smiling gently at the old man. She saw that he was not looking at her with jealousy or sadness or longing. Instead he was looking peaceful. He was looking happy, not in a fake way but in a real way. Zainab continued walking toward David, but something inside her was confused. This was not how she had imagined this moment. She had wanted Kofi to be jealous. She had wanted him to regret losing her. She had wanted him to see her marrying David and suffer. But that was not what was happening at all. During the ceremony, as the vows were being exchanged, Zainab kept glancing back at Kofi. She watched as he helped Kwesi stand up during parts of the ceremony. She watched as he whispered something in Kwesi's ear and Kwesi smiled. She watched as he helped another guest who seemed confused about when to stand and when to sit. She saw kindness in every action. She saw a man she did not recognize. After the ceremony there was a reception. Tables were full of food. There was music and dancing. People celebrated and drank and laughed. Most of the guests gathered around Kofi, wanting to talk to him, wanting to network with him, wanting to be near his success and power. But Kofi did not spend time with these people. Instead he stayed with Kwesi. When food was served, Kofi and Kwesi sat at their table. Kofi filled a plate with good food for himself. But then he took some of the best pieces and put them on Kwesi's plate. He made sure Kwesi was comfortable. He made sure he had water to drink. He treated the old man like he was the most important person in the room. An important businessman approached their table and invited Kofi to join an exclusive group of wealthy men for drinks and conversation. This was the kind of invitation Kofi would normally have jumped at. These men were powerful and influential. Networking with them could lead to big business opportunities. But Kofi politely declined. "I am with my friend," Kofi said, gesturing to Kwesi. "I do not want to leave him alone. Please join us if you wish." The businessman was surprised. He did not understand why a billionaire would choose to sit with a homeless old man instead of networking with powerful people. But he left, shaking his head in confusion. As the evening went on, Zainab watched from a distance. She watched Kofi laugh genuinely at something Kwesi said. Not a polite laugh but a real, deep laugh that came from his belly. She watched as he listened to Kwesi with complete attention, as if the old man was the most interesting person in the world. She watched as he showed more care and attention to this one old man than she had ever seen him show to anyone, including her. Her new husband, David, noticed her watching Kofi. "Why are you looking at him?" David asked, a note of jealousy in his voice. "Do you regret marrying me?" Zainab did not answer right away. She was thinking. She was realizing something important. She had invited Kofi to this wedding because she wanted to prove something to him. She wanted to make him jealous and hurt. But now she could see that Kofi had changed. He had become something better than before. He had become wise. He had learned what really mattered. And more than that, she realized something sad about herself. She was marrying David because he was successful and rich just like she was. But she did not love him the way she had loved Kofi. She had not felt in David's eyes the kind of genuine care she now saw in Kofi's actions toward Kwesi. She had traded love for security. She had chosen status over happiness. As the night continued, Zainab felt her carefully planned moment of triumph slowly crumble. She had wanted this wedding to be a victory, a way of showing Kofi that she had won. But instead, she was beginning to understand that Kofi had actually won something much more valuable than anything she had gained. He had won wisdom. He had won peace. He had won the ability to see what truly matters in life. And that, she realized, was something money could never buy. The garden terrace of the grand ballroom was a peaceful place, hidden away from the noise and celebration inside. It was lit by soft lights strung between the trees. There were flower beds and stone benches. The air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of jasmine and other night flowers. It was the kind of place where people went when they wanted to escape from the crowd and think quietly. It was nearly midnight when Zainab came out to the terrace. The reception was still going on inside, but she had excused herself, telling David that she needed some fresh air. Her wedding dress was still perfect, but now it felt heavy and tight around her. She walked slowly across the terrace, her mind full of confused thoughts and feelings. That was when she saw him. Kofi was sitting alone on one of the stone benches, looking out at the dark garden. He was no longer wearing his jacket. His shirt sleeves were rolled up. He looked tired but also peaceful. When he heard her footsteps, he turned around. For a moment they just looked at each other without speaking. Zainab sat down beside him on the bench. They were close but not touching. For a long time neither of them spoke. The silence was heavy with 5 years of missing each other, 5 years of hurt, 5 years of unfinished conversations. Finally, Zainab spoke. Her voice was shaky and emotional. "Why did you come?" she asked. "When you got my invitation, why did you decide to come?" Kofi turned to look at her. He studied her face as if trying to remember every detail of how she looked. "I do not know exactly," he said slowly. "When I saw your name on that invitation, my heart stopped. I told myself that I should not come. I told myself that it would only bring me pain. But something inside me said that I had to be here. I had to see you one more time." Zainab closed her eyes. A single tear ran down her cheek. "I invited you to make you jealous," she said quietly. "I wanted you to come and see me marrying David. I wanted you to regret losing me. I wanted you to suffer the way I suffered when you chose your business over me. I wanted to win." Hearing these words, Kofi felt pain, but he also felt something like understanding. He reached out and gently took Zainab's hand. Her hand was small and warm, just as he remembered it. "I know," he said. "I could see it in your eyes when you walked down the aisle. I could see that you were looking for my reaction. I could see that you wanted me to be broken." "Were you?" Zainab asked. "Were you broken?" Kofi was quiet for a moment. He thought about his journey that day. He thought about meeting Kwesi on that broken-down road. He thought about everything Kwesi had taught him in just a few hours. "No," he said finally. "I was not broken. Because something happened to me before I even got here. Something that changed everything." He told her about his car breaking down. He told her about meeting Kwesi and learning about his life. He told her about how a homeless old man had shown him more wisdom than all the business books and success seminars he had ever attended. He told her that Kwesi had helped him see that his entire life had been built on the wrong foundation. "I came to this wedding thinking I needed to prove something to you," Kofi continued. "I thought I needed to show you that I had become rich and powerful and successful without you. I thought that would make you regret leaving me. But when I met Kwesi, I realized that I had already lost the most important things in my life. I lost them long before you left me. I lost them when I decided that money was more important than love. I lost them when I decided that business deals were more important than the people I cared about." Zainab was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "I did not want to marry David," she said. "I chose him because he was successful and could give me everything I wanted. But as I walked down the aisle today, I realized that I had everything I wanted and nothing I needed. I have a big house, but I am lonely inside it. I have expensive clothes, but I do not feel beautiful. I have a rich husband, but I do not feel loved." She turned to face Kofi directly. "When I watched you with that old man tonight, I saw something that I have never seen in David's eyes. I saw genuine kindness. I saw real care. I saw a man who had learned what matters. And I realized that I had made a terrible mistake. I married for the wrong reasons, just like you built your empire for the wrong reasons." Kofi squeezed her hand gently. "We were both lost," he said. We were both trying to fill empty spaces inside ourselves with things that could never fill them. You tried to fill it with status and security. I tried to fill it with money and power. But neither of those things can fill a human heart. Only love and purpose and genuine connection can do that. Zainab wiped her tears and looked at Kofi with sad eyes. I still love you, she said softly. I have always loved you. Even when I was angry with you, even when I was trying to make you jealous, even when I married David, I never stopped loving you. But I think it is too late now. I made my choice. Kofi felt pain hearing these words, but he also felt something unexpected. He felt peaceful. I love you too, he said. I probably always will. But maybe love is not always enough. Maybe sometimes people need to walk different paths. Maybe we both needed to learn these lessons separately so that we could become the people we were meant to be. They sat together in silence for a long time after that. They did not hold each other or kiss. They did not make any promises or talk about what might have been. Instead, they simply sat together, acknowledging the truth of what they had lost and what they had learned. Finally, Zainab spoke. What will you do now? She asked. I am going to change my life, Kofi said. I am going to take Kwesi and find ways to help people like him. I am going to build something with my money that actually means something. I am going to stop chasing success and start chasing purpose. That is good, Zainab said. That is really good. I think I am going to do the same. I think I am going to end my marriage to David. I cannot spend my whole life with someone I do not truly love. I am going to find a way to make my life mean something. Kofi nodded. I am happy to hear that. You deserve to be happy, Zainab. You deserve to find a life that fills your heart, not just your bank account. As they stood up to go back inside, Zainab hugged Kofi. It was not a romantic hug. It was a hug of understanding. It was a hug that said goodbye to what they had been, and acknowledged what they had both learned. Thank you for coming today, Zainab said. Thank you for bringing that old man. Thank you for showing me what I had forgotten. Thank you for inviting me, Kofi replied. Thank you for being part of my journey, even when we were not together. And thank you for being brave enough to realize that you deserve better. As they walked back toward the ballroom, both Kofi and Zainab felt something shift inside them. The pain was still there, but it was a different kind of pain now. It was the pain of growth. It was the pain of finally seeing the truth about themselves and their choices. And underneath that pain was something like hope. Hope that they could both build better lives. Hope that they could both find real purpose and real happiness. They had come to the wedding thinking they were playing a game of jealousy and pride. But instead they had found something much more valuable. They had found honesty. They had found understanding. They had found the courage to admit that they had been wrong, and the wisdom to know that it was not too late to change. 6 months had passed since the wedding. 6 months since Kofi's life had changed completely. 6 months since he had met an old homeless man on a broken road and learned what it truly meant to be rich. The foundation was called the Kwesi Osei Foundation, named after the man who had become Kofi's closest friend and most important teacher. The office was located in a modest building in central Accra, not in the expensive business district where Kofi's old company headquarters had been. The building was simple and clean, with large windows that let in plenty of natural light. Inside there were desks for the staff, a meeting room, and a small library of books and educational materials. Kofi spent most of his time at the foundation now, working alongside Kwesi. The old man, who had once been homeless and forgotten, was now the heart and soul of the organization. He was the one who went out into the streets and met with the homeless people. He was the one who listened to their stories and understood their pain, because he had lived through that pain himself. He was the one who knew how to treat people with dignity and respect, even when they had nothing. The foundation did many things. It provided temporary shelter for homeless people. It offered hot meals and clean clothes. It provided medical care and counseling. But more importantly, it provided hope and education. The foundation taught people skills they could use to find jobs. It helped people reconnect with their families. It gave people the chance to rebuild their lives with dignity and purpose. Kwesi was amazing in this work. He would spend hours talking with people on the streets, listening to their stories, understanding their struggles. He never judged them. He never made them feel ashamed. Instead, he made them feel valued. He made them understand that their circumstances did not define their worth as human beings. Many people who had been on the streets came to the foundation and completely changed their lives, simply because Kwesi had believed in them and shown them kindness. One of these people was a young man named Amos. Amos had been living on the streets for 3 years after his parents had died. He was angry and lost and had almost given up on life. But Kwesi found him and brought him to the foundation. Kwesi spent time with him, talked to him, helped him see that life was still worth living. Now, 6 months later, Amos was in a job training program. He was learning skills as an electrician. He had a small room in a house run by the foundation where he could stay while he got back on his feet. He called Kwesi grandfather, and visited him every single day. There was also a woman named Comfort. She had been homeless for 5 years, living with her 2 children under a bridge. She had no education and no job skills. She was desperate and exhausted. The foundation helped her get training as a cook. Now she worked in the foundation's kitchen, preparing meals for the people they helped. She had a small apartment and her children were in school. She cried when she talked about how the foundation had saved her life. Stories like these were happening constantly. The foundation was changing lives. And it was Kwesi who was doing most of the work. Kofi provided the money and the resources, but Kwesi provided the heart and the wisdom. The other major change in those 6 months was that Zainab had joined them. 2 weeks after the wedding, Zainab had told David that she was leaving him. It had been difficult. David had been angry. He had asked her why she was making such a crazy decision. He had tried to convince her to stay. But Zainab had been clear and firm. She could not spend her life with someone she did not love. She could not pretend to be happy when she was miserable inside. The divorce process had been complicated because David was rich and powerful and wanted to fight her on everything. But eventually it was finished. Zainab gave up most of the money and property, asking only to keep enough to live on. She walked away from her marriage with very little, but with her freedom and her dignity intact. Her family had been shocked and disappointed. They had thought she was crazy to leave a rich, successful man. They had thought she was throwing away her life. But Zainab did not care what they thought anymore. She had finally learned that their approval was not worth her happiness. 1 month after her separation, Zainab had come to the Kwesi Osei Foundation. She had walked in one morning and asked if they needed help. Kofi had been surprised to see her. He had not expected her to come. But Zainab explained that she wanted to be part of something meaningful. She wanted her life to matter. Now, 6 months later, Zainab was working as a counselor at the foundation. She worked with women who had experienced homelessness and poverty. She listened to their stories. She helped them plan for their futures. She taught them about financial literacy and job skills. She was brilliant at this work, because she brought both her education and her genuine compassion. She had become someone completely different from the woman who had married David for status. The 3 of them, Kofi, Kwesi, and Zainab, had become a team. They worked together toward a common goal. They held meetings every week to discuss what was working and what needed to improve. They celebrated successes together. They faced challenges together. Kofi and Zainab had not become romantically involved again. They had tried briefly, but they both realized that what they had now was more important than romance. They had a partnership based on shared purpose and genuine respect. They had a friendship that was deeper and more meaningful than what they had had before. When Kofi had suggested trying to be together again, Zainab had said, "I love you, but I do not need you to make my life meaningful anymore. My life is meaningful because I am helping others. That is enough for me now." Kofi had understood and agreed. He too had found that his happiness no longer depended on having a romantic relationship. His happiness came from doing work that mattered. His happiness came from seeing people like Amos and Comfort rebuild their lives. His happiness came from working alongside Kwesi and learning from him every single day. The foundation had expanded beyond Accra. With Kofi's resources and Kwesi's wisdom, they had opened branches in other cities across West Africa. In Ghana, in Nigeria, in Ivory Coast, in Senegal, the Kwesi Osei Foundation was spreading. They were helping hundreds of people. They were changing communities. One evening, Kofi, Zainab, and Kwesi were sitting together in the foundation office, reviewing the day's work. They were looking at reports about the people they had helped, the jobs that had been created, the families that had been reunited. "Do you remember that day your car broke down?" Zainab asked Kofi, smiling. Kofi laughed. "How could I forget? That was the best thing that ever happened to me." Kwesi smiled his gentle smile. "God works in mysterious ways," he said. "My car did not break down by accident. It broke down because that is how the universe decided to bring us together." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, each thinking about their own journeys, about how far they had come, about how much they had learned. "I want to tell you both something," Kwesi said. His voice was soft but strong. "When I was living on the streets, I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left to give to the world. I thought I was useless. But then Kofi found me and I learned that I still had something valuable to offer. I still had my experience, my wisdom, my compassion. And now, because of both of you, I am able to use these gifts to help other people. I am able to make my life mean something again. Tears came to Kwesi's old eyes. Thank you, he said simply. Thank you for reminding me that I was still worth something. Thank you for giving my life purpose again. Kofi and Zainab hugged their friend. They understood exactly what he meant, because they too had been transformed by this journey. Kofi had learned that money and power and success meant nothing without purpose and compassion. Zainab had learned that status and security meant nothing without genuine love and meaningful work. And Kwesi had learned that homelessness and poverty could not take away your value as a human being. The three of them had become living proof of something very important. They had become proof that true wealth is not measured in money. True wealth is measured in the lives you touch, the people you help, the purpose you find. True wealth is measured in love and compassion and service to others. Months turned into years. The foundation grew bigger and stronger. More people were helped. More lives were changed. The story of Kofi, Zainab, and Kwesi spread throughout West Africa. People talked about the billionaire who had given up his empty life to help others. They talked about the society woman who had chosen purpose over status. They talked about the beggar who had become a teacher and a mentor. But the three of them did not think of themselves as special or heroic. They simply thought of themselves as people who had finally learned what really mattered. People who had finally understood that the richest life is not the one with the most possessions, but the one filled with meaning, purpose, and genuine human connection. And that, they knew, was a wealth that would never run out, a wealth that only grew stronger the more you gave it away.